Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in to this revision of area and perimeter. So there's three shapes on your screen that you should already know: rectangle, triangle, and parallelogram, and we're going to find the area and perimeter of each. So let's start with perimeter. So perimeter is easy. It's just the length around the outside of a 2D shape. So you just take the lengths of each of the sides and add them up. Perimeter is always measured in meters or centimeters, millimeters, or whatever. It's area that's measured in meters squared or centimeters squared or whatever. So let's look at the perimeter of the first shape, the rectangle. So the perimeter is going to be 6 plus 4, but remember there's another side that's 6 and another side that's 4, because opposite sides are equal in a rectangle. So I need to add them up and times by 2, and I get 20, and of course the units are in meters. Let's do the same for the triangle. So note this dash here mean that those two sides are equal. Sides with the same dash through them are equal. So the perimeter of this triangle, there's two sides that are 13, one side that is 10. So I just add them up and I get 36 centimeters. All right, for the parallelogram, no different. We're going to add up the lengths of the sides. So these lines here mean that the sides are parallel. So these two sides are parallel and these two sides are parallel. So just like in a rectangle, opposite sides are equal in a parallelogram. So the perimeter, there's two sides that are 16. There are two sides that are 10. So if you add them up, you should get 52. This time it's in millimeters. Okay, so perimeter is easy for any shape. Let's look at area. So for a rectangle, you should know that it's just length times width. You times them together. So that's a general rule here. You add for perimeter and times for area. So if I times them, I just get 6 times 4, which is 24, and now the units are square units, so it's meters squared. So for a triangle, it's the same, almost. You just have to do one extra thing, and that is you have to divide by 2, because a triangle is like half a rectangle. So the formula for the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. Now note, whenever we say h, we mean height, but we mean in particular perpendicular height, not slant height. So the area of the triangle here is base times perpendicular height divided by 2. And that will be 60. In this case, it will be centimeters squared. Okay, so make sure you don't use the slant height when finding the area of any shape. So for a parallelogram, it's basically a rectangle, but on its side it's slanted, if you like. The difference between a rectangle and a parallelogram is that a parallelogram doesn't necessarily have all angles equal. It doesn't have right angles. So what we have to do for a parallelogram is make sure we're timesing the base by the perpendicular height, not the slant height. So again, h means perpendicular height. So the area of this wouldn't be 16 times 10, it would be 16 base times 8, because 8 is the perpendicular height, and that just gives you 128, and now we're in millimeters squared. How easy is that? Now we're just going to take a second to look at converting units. So here is a chart you can follow to convert linear units, one-dimensional units. Just follow the arrows. So for example, if you want to convert millimeters to centimeters, you divide by 10. Follow that arrow. If you wanted to convert, say, millimeters into meters, you follow 2 arrows. You divide by 10 to get centimeters, then you divide by 100 to get meters, and so on. So just make sure that you know that the rule is when you're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit, you divide because there are fewer of the larger unit. So that's why when we're going millimeters to centimeters, we're dividing. If you want to go from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you times, because there are more of the smaller units, okay? So divide if you're going from smaller unit to larger unit, times if you're going from larger unit to smaller unit. Okay, so we've got to also know how to convert square units. So it's very, very similar, except we just put a couple of squares on. So we're going to look at converting millimeters squared, centimeters squared, meters squared, and kilometers squared. So to go from millimeters squared to centimeters squared, you don't divide by 10, you need to divide by 10 squared or divide by 100. And that's the same. When you are converting square units, you have to square what we call the conversion factor. So you know that to go from kilometers to meters, you normally times by 1,000. So to go from kilometers squared to meters squared, you need to times by 1,000 squared, which is actually 1,000,000. That's right. There are 1,000,000 square meters in a square kilometer. So just make sure you don't mess that up. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So let's say I was asked to convert 7 meters squared into centimeters squared. How many centimeters squared in 7 meters squared? Well, what I have to do is I have to take 7 and I have to follow the arrow that's here from meters squared to centimeters squared. I have to times by 100 squared. So 100 squared is actually 10,000. So I'd end up with 70,000 centimeters squared. There are 70,000 centimeters squared in a meter squared. So let's say, for example, I wanted to convert 1,000,000 millimeters squared, and I'm going to find out how many square meters that is. So I need to follow two arrows. So I need to divide by 10 squared. So I need to divide by 100, which is the same as crossing off two zeros. Now it's in centimeters squared. I then need to divide by 100 squared, which is 10,000, to get into meters squared. So I need to cross off 4 more zeros. So it turns out that 1,000,000 millimeters squared is the same as 1 meter squared. All right, we're just going to look at one sort of problem-solving type question. So we're going to have a look at this question here. We're told that the area of a rectangle is 36 centimeters squared, perimeter 26 centimeters, and we want to find its dimensions. So we want to find what is the length and what is the width of this rectangle. So because the area is 36 centimeters squared, we know that we are going to have to multiply two numbers, the length and the width, to get 36. So we're going to start by looking at factors of 36. Because the perimeter is also a whole number, we're just going to look at whole number factors of 36. So I could have 36 and 1. If they were the dimensions of rectangle, the area would be 36 centimeters squared. I could have 18 and 2. If they were the dimensions, the area would be 36 again. 12 and 3, 9 and 4, or 6 and 6. Note, a square is a special type of rectangle. A square is a rectangle because it's a quadrilateral with all angles equal. Okay, so that could be the answer. So all of these dimensions of a rectangle will give the area 36 centimeters squared. Now, let's have a look at which of those will give a perimeter of 26 centimeters. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, none add up to 26. We don't want them to add to 26, because what we're saying is we have the length and the width. When I add this and then double it, then I should get 26. So actually, I'm looking for two numbers that add to 13, because if this and this add to 13, the perimeter will be 13 plus 13, 26. So the answer is 9 and 4, because 9 plus 4 is 13, 9 times 4 is 36. So if I had a rectangle that was 9 by 4, the area would be 9 times 4, which is 36, so that's easy as. The perimeter will be 9 plus 4, which is 13, plus 9 plus 4, which is 26 centimeters. So the dimensions of the rectangle will be 9 centimeters and 4 centimeters. Doesn't really matter which you call the length and which you call the width. All right, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.